and we work on active listening while we're here. We're trying to train our ears to hear Torah. So when Jake is chanting, in a minute when Abigail is chanting, uh, listen for words that you think you recognize. Even if it doesn't matter if you're wrong. There's not really wrong, to be honest, when it comes to Torah. So just try to listen, see if you can hear any words. It's cool to think that we may be able to construct or get a clue what he's reading just from listening. Okay, that would be a pretty impressive thing to be able to do, in my opinion. So, I think we can leave that one there. We should be okay. We got a roll, like it says, your personal variation, right? Awesome. I'm assuming if we need help, you might be able to tell us a little bit about it. Yeah, without spoiling your divertible. Okay, and Lindsay, you're keeping an eye on the waiting room? I guess we don't have one. We're no waiting room. We should be fine. We should. I'll roll a couple questions here. Thanks everyone for being patient. One other thing that is fun might not be the right word, but it's interesting, is to see if these two Torah readings, which are more or less completely random, have anything to say to one another. Does that make sense? Does Jake's reading from Genesis have anything that sheds light on Abigail's reading from Leviticus, and vice versa? Obviously, we won't know that until we've had a chance to discuss both of those. Very close. Vayeshev, yeah, right? Okay, so let's trade places. Let's give you your yod. Very distinctive. Make sure you take this home with you today. All right. Let's get that off later. Don't start yet. Let's read the blessing. So please, guys, join with me. Baruch et Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Hamarach Le'olam V'Hed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam V'Hed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'krabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch atah Adonai v'nitin haTorah.
Amen.
Give me 1 second to get there. Okay. Go ahead first. There you go. Yeah.
Amen. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv be'eretz Kenan ele toledot Yaakov Yosef ben 17 shana haya ro'eh et achav batzon vehu nar et bnei Bilha et bnei Zilpa neshei aviv vayaveh Yosef v'dibatam ra'ah el aviv ben Yisrael, Ahav, et Yosef mikol banav, even zekunim hu lo, v'asat lo ketonet pasim. Vayu echav, ki otov, Ahav, avichem mikol echav, vayishneu otov, velo yachelu daberu leshalom.
Say Yashikah, please.
Yashikah.
May you have strength. Those special Torah readings, you can work on other. We don't have a ton of time because there's 2 Torah readings. Any words that we recognize? There should be at least a handful from this one. Yeah, Zach.
That was my portrait.
Nice. So did you recognize the whole thing? Tell, give us a couple. What's it about?
It's about how Jacob and his kids, and he gives the hope to his favorite.
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, and you get all mad. So.
Awesome. You got it. So that's pretty cool, actually. Did you know that? You get to, okay, you share a parsha. Awesome. It's an interesting connection. And let's see. Looking around. So does anybody know what the coat of many colors is called in Hebrew? Zach, do you remember? Or do you know, Jake? It's in here. It's Ketonet Pasim, which is really interesting. And it's actually quite appropriate for Tacky Wacky Wednesday. Who in this room has probably the closest approximation to Joseph's coat? Julia? Let's see. Let's see your. Let's see your sweatshirt. It looks about right.
I like it.
Yeah. Isaac's got it in the footwear.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They were probably wearing sandals, but
Yeah, they were wearing Crocs back then.
Yeah. So actually, it's kind of funny. I don't think any of us repeat after me, Ketona,
Ketona.
Hasim.
Hasim.
So now we have an interesting opportunity to inscribe that really important phrase in our hearts because it's Tacky Wacky Wednesday. What a perfect day to be reading about what was probably a pretty tacky wacky piece of clothing, which had serious repercussions in terms of the family story. So why don't we just have you read it so that we were all on the same page, and then we can talk about it for a moment in English. It's the first paragraph.
Jacob settled in the land of his father's surname, in the land of Canaan. These are the chronicles of Jacob. Joseph, at the age of 17 years, was a shepherd with his brothers by the flock. But he was a youth with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. His father's wives and Joseph would bring evil reports about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, since he was a child of his old age, and he made him fine wood and timber. His brothers saw him, and it was he whom their father loved the most of all his brothers. So they hated him, and they could not speak to him peaceably. Joseph dreamt a dream, which he told his brothers, and they hated him.
Okay, there's quite a bit there. Oh wait, there's one more. His brothers saw, received their father the most. Okay, you got it. Okay, good. So, in terms of discussion here, I think there are a couple things. I mean, what would you say is an obvious, relevant topic in terms of what Jake just read for our last today?
Inequality.
Inequality would be a really good one, for sure. What do you mean by inequality? The fact that
He favored less children and got more higher of.
okay, so inequality is an interesting. You said inequality first, and then you got to the word that I was thinking of, which is kind of this idea of favorites. And I actually think those are two really important issues. When I think of inequality, I tend to think of it as in a societal level. You know, like who has opportunities, racism, discrimination, income, all sorts of things like that. When I think about family relationships and like social, peer relationships, kind of favorites, favoritism, best friends, like that whole thing is kind of how I would describe that. Why don't we talk about favorites for a second, if we could? What do you guys think? Is this just a natural part of life that a parent would maybe love one child or have a favorite child more than another?
I don't think they'd ever say it, though.
No, they never do.
They never
So what do parents say when this issue comes up?
They love us equally.
No, listen,
I think
Lord.
so.
No, listen.
Okay, so we're getting a cross section. Some say, I love all my children or all my grandchildren equally. Some just come out right and say it. Maybe they don't actually mean it, or maybe they do mean it. Does he mean it in your, yeah?
No, I don't think
Yeah. Okay. It's an interesting topic. It's what do you think? Is Jacob? Do you think that Jacob is responsible for the strife and for the conflict that exists among his children because of his sort of obvious favoring one over the other? What do you think?
I think the dad would know who his kid is, and who he is, how he acts, if he's responsible or not. Because I don't know, we know him, but we don't really know him that well as his dad does.
So you're saying that Jacob is, we can assume that Jacob is right to favor one over others because.
He's not right to favor one of the others, but if he had to give coat to one of them, I would trust him because he's the father.
So I guess there's a previous question. Did he have to give coat to any? Did he have to have a favor?
I know.
Right? And the Torah doesn't make it clear. So who says yes, Jacob is responsible for the actions of the brothers because of his picking one over others? Anybody willing to just say something out loud about why you think that? You're pretty willing?
Yeah, because if you didn't pick the favorite, then all the other products would be much, and like kind of Jacob's fault because he's thinking for anybody, they'd all be not equal, but they'd all be equal.
So it's a really interesting thing, and I'm inclined to agree with you guys. And Zach, I'm actually remembering now when you chanted Torah last year, or what a different world it was, because I had a realization about this exact reading, which is, I think it's a perfectly reasonable argument. This is just my opinion at this moment to lay blame at Jacob's doorstep for kind of mismanaging and not necessarily having the best parenting skills, right? I mean, this was, by the way, long before there were books written about how to be a good parent, right? Mr. Odell, you have any of those books on your bookshelf when your kids were young? Yeah, we all, right? So now there are books and there are experts and there are coaches and there are Facebook groups that tell you how to be a good parent. Jacob obviously didn't have any of those things. But if we say that Jacob is responsible for the conflict between his children, where does it end? Is he responsible for the fact that maybe they didn't like to sit down at Thanksgiving together? Or is he responsible for the fact that they eventually throw Joseph in a pit and leave him for dead? I'm passing. Yes, obviously they didn't have Thanksgiving.
The nice meal.
How far is he responsible? At what point do you become responsible for your actions, even if something happened to you? Right? I mean, the brothers, what I realized when Zach read this story last year, is the fact that the brothers hated Joseph was their choice. The fact that they couldn't say anything nice about him, I think that was that they had a reason for sure. But ultimately that was their choice, right? I mean, they could have said, how could they have reacted differently?
But it's not something, it's like the father. It's different. When it's showing, it kind of shows that they love the other one more, the other brother more, and that kind of hurts. I feel like if my father or if they liked one kid over the other, then it would just feel different than it's not something you can just be like, oh, okay, and be mature about it.
Right.
I think they had a right to be mad and angry at the other.
So I would totally agree. This is a deep wound, right? I mean, the parents have a major impact on children's lives for better, usually, sometimes for worse. But then the question becomes, how do their anger and their hatred and their resentment of their father and of their brother, how did that serve them and make their lives better? So Lindsay and Sadie, yeah.
We can be mad at him. They don't have to say it until you say it. You can just feel like happy for him. And then be like mad by themselves and it's his mother, but it's kind of prove that even though they have the right to be mad, it's really to say it.
So they could have just, gone and blown. They could have gone maybe blown off some steam in some other way. They could have taken the anger out. That we call that kind of passive aggressive, which isn't also necessarily a good thing. Instead of saying the thing to the person that you're actually angry with, you say it, to someone else, or you take it out on someone else. But that's an option, Sadie.
Well, I think that when Jacob favored Joseph for the first time, it was more like sadness and jealousy for the brothers. But then when it was left to them, they kind of turned it into hate. And I think that they have a perfect reason to be mad, but they shouldn't have taken it out on Joseph because it's mostly that he's in control. But they have a perfect reason to do that.
I hope you guys on Zoom could hear what Sadie just said. That's you express a level of maturity. All of you have, by the way, but that's quite profound because Mr. Odell knows where I'm going with this. There are primary emotions and there are secondary emotions, right? And I would argue that hatred is a secondary emotion and that underneath hatred is a deeper emotion. You identified maybe sadness, jealousy. I think jealousy is even. I think actually I believe that there are only two primary emotions: love and fear. And everything that we do either out of love or out of fear. So I think for the brothers, the fact that their father seemed to like one more than the other really scared them. It's scary to think that your father doesn't love you as much as he loves your sibling. What's wrong with me? Why am I not deserving of that love? And all of a sudden, I'm afraid, am I not good enough? And then maybe from there, well, that makes me sad. But I don't like feeling sad. I'd rather feel angry. And et cetera, et cetera. Really interesting stuff. Ian, last comment on this one, unless Jake does anything else.
It might have not been that he was his favorite. It might have been just who he thought would be most likely to keep the coat and pass it on from one generation.
That's certainly interesting, right? I mean, he saw something in Joseph, right? Or maybe Joseph was the only one who was the right size. You know, sometimes, right? Maybe he's the only one who the coat would fit. It's like, I really want to give this to someone, and Joseph's the right height, and he has the right shoulders, right? Or he saw something in Joseph which said, for Joseph a coat, for this one something else, for this one something else. Like, I don't know if your parents have in your guys' life separate, but you know, like with my daughter, we love to, I don't know, sing songs and do karaoke. With my son, we like to play Nintendo. Separate, you know, but kind of equal. Yeah, go ahead.
See where I was getting like the maturity from
Oh, you stink
from
with
the
that
brother,
stuff.
but is the dad
Ugh,
saying to be mature
you're
about
not doing
like giving it to one child? It's hard for the kids to be, and I feel like people need to put
You
themselves
overdo it
in
with
their
that stuff.
siblings' shoes. Like, how would you feel? I doubt any of the people in here are going to say, okay, yay, good job, and then go and then cry in the room. They're gonna be mad at that point. But that's just the human like mind. You're not gonna go away and I don't know. You're gonna be mad. No one's gonna be so calm.
Big call for empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I always, whenever we get to this point in the Torah that I think about, is I go back to the Akedah. And like we have generations in the patriarchs of father to son of messing it up. Really not, of having a moment where maybe you weren't a great parent. And what kind of ripples and echoes do we see as a result of that? I mean, that we see when Isaac has two sons, he favors one over the other.
When the one he favors is Jacob.
And the one he favors is Jacob. I mean, but he loves Esau. And then the dynamics that we see. This is part of the reason I love Torah, is that sometimes the examples we see give us a lot to chew on, not because it's perfect, but because it's really messy.
And actually, let me say one thing that undermines this whole conversation, and then we'll bring up Abigail. So I was doing a little bit of research. And do you guys know the teaching, the song Al Shloshah Devarim? Al Shloshah Devarim. What are they? All HaTorah, All HaAvodah, All Gemilut Chasadim. And there's a teaching which says that each of the three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is associated with one of those things. Does anybody want to match which patriarch is associated with Gemilut Chasadim, with acts of kindness? It's Abraham. Okay, because he welcomed the strangers to his tent. He took care of his nephew, yada, yada, yada. Avodah means sacrifice. And which of the patriarchs, which of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is associated with sacrifice? Isaac. So that leaves Torah. Which of the patriarchs is associated with Torah? Jacob. So we are taught that Jacob was a Torah scholar. Now, how could he be a Torah scholar when the Torah tells it, the story? It doesn't matter. The tradition says Jacob is a Torah scholar. So the one who knows the most about the Torah is incapable of raising his own children in a healthy and productive way. So it raises the question, well, what is the point of knowing a lot of Torah if it doesn't make you a good person, if it doesn't allow you to be a good father and have healthy relationships? So maybe we just kind of end with that question, but I thought that was kind of a fascinating thing. And one of the things I like about Judaism, it has these internal critiques. It says, Torah is the most important thing. And then it says, but you know what? You can study all the Torah in the world and you can still not be a great parent. You can still not be a great friend. You can still not be a good person. And so, I don't know. I just think that's kind of a cool thing that I discovered as I was preparing for Jake. Can we say Yasher Koach again to Jake?
Yasher Koach.
They have strength. Looking forward to celebrating with you on Friday. Spoiler alert, a lot of nice things were said about you. And Abigail, come on up, because a lot of nice things were said about you.
That's all we want.
Okay. Really good job. Take the yard with you.
And we got a bag.
Okay, so Abigail's reading from Leviticus.